So this evening then we have another gathering of what we call in our language, the Pali language, we call this Kalyana Mitta. Kalyana means beautiful or lovely or good, noble. Mitta is the Pali for friend, related to the word Maitreya. You may have heard of Maitreya Buddha. Maitreya means loving kindness. Mitta means friend. So a mitta is somebody who has loving kindness. So we are Kalyana Mitta. We are spiritual, beautiful friends, people who have loving kindness for one another, come together with no other wish other than our wellness, gather together, yet then turn inwards, turn away from each other for a while, because that is our wish. That's where we feel, we believe, if you like, we have the view that that's what we need most. We need to find that which is in ourselves, that which lies within is that which is most valuable. So this, I like to reflect on words a lot. Inspiration, this idea, respiration or breathing, so important, and it's linked with inspiration, something that inspires you. It lifts up your heart, you breathe in. And these are your aspirations. These are all linked, these words. And I was reminded of my old Latin teacher at school was very fond of just giving us little sayings to remember. And one of the ones which just popped into my head the other day was, he would say, Dum spiro spero. If any of you know that, he had a classics. It means while I breathe, I hope. Spiro is I breathe, spero, like esperar in Spanish, is to hope. When you're desperate, you're without hope. So, while I breathe, I hope, is an old maxim from the Roman era, saying that, look, as long as you're alive, there's hope. And your hopes and dreams, like your inspirations, lie in this life itself and with every breath. And hope can have a sort of negative sense, like sort of so-and-so is just always hoping, or hoping, like don't just hope, do it, make it happen. But hope is actually very important. Hope is a lot, hopes and dreams are what in many ways guide us. And I think I've grown up, many of you grown up in a very kind of rational, practical world where you're taught, don't be a dreamer, be somebody who's realistic, be practical. The word a dreamer is not very good, but the Buddha was a dreamer. The great creators, the great thinkers, the artists, the people who have brought things into our world have been the ones who have dared to dream. And so this idea of, well, as we breathe in and out, what are our hopes and dreams? And to realize those, I think, is something which is very, very worth making conscious. And knowing that we're always pushed in the other way, we're pushed towards the practical, we're pushed towards what's called real, like reality, get real, man. But that's one take or one version of events. So, obviously, the context for our meeting here today, in one sense, the backdrop is this, and yet another tragedy or yet another thing. We've had a fire. Now we're all safe and sound. We have so much to be grateful for. Our friends have lost things. Some of us don't know whether our house or our monastery is safe. But bit by bit, we should be becoming used to that. Just before I flew here to the States in June, on the street where my sister lives in London, this big tower block burnt down. You could see it from the end of her road. And so I went to the community centre there. There's a lot of pain, a lot of chaos, a lot of confusion, many of the same issues, people, immigrants, language, cultures, fear, authorities, all these issues, these dramas, in the heart of safe London, in the most wealthy borough of London, the royal borough of Kensington and Chelsea, and people basically being abandoned. And here we are in one of the wealthiest states, and people are being well looked after. But you can't bring back people's lives and homes. And so, this is something which is a feature of our life. We can't deny it. I was also involved in a tsunami kind of in Thailand many years ago. When I went after that, joined in the kind of support for that. People on holidays, Boxing Day is the day after Christmas, on their holidays in the south of Thailand, and then suddenly a giant wave comes in. And so it's like a movie, like something which is unreal, but we're getting used to that. It's real, whether it's man-made or natural. And so this is what the Buddha was pointing to, and wise people have always pointed to these truths of the uncertainty, the change, the impermanence, the fact that it's not really something we should hold on to. But, where do we go? So the beauty of a spiritual path, or a path of some kind of inquiry, is that we're provided, or we have an alternative which we can investigate. And so I hope we're finally learning it, and we're finally getting the message then that, important as the basics, the basics of life, the practical side is, we need food, we need shelter, we need clothing, and things like the support of our friends. We'll get by with a little help from our friends. These are important things. But that's not going to be our ultimate refuge. You're never going to find real safety there. And so we're getting that message again and again and again, whether it comes in the form of a forest fire coming in, we see our own body breaking down, and if you want to look outside at the world. But the basic, it's all part of what we call aging, sickness and death, decline, decay, break up, pass away. That's all it is. In a sense, we can move back from the details, or what we call the signs and features of this whole experience, and sum it up. It's arising and passing away. Empires, lives, anything is all basically doing the same thing, going according to nature. And so this thing, this concept, is then what the spiritual teachers, and particularly our tradition, Buddha, forest tradition from Thailand, has been saying again and again, for those who have ears to hear it or who are interested to think in this way. And it doesn't mean that we're going to reject life, reject the world, reject the situation. On the contrary, we understand it. We know it for what it is. It's just that. And as I said, we have an alternative, and that's something which we feel, we intuitively feel. I came off retreat and I heard there'd been another mass shooting. Again, I think we get dull to this, just again and again, another one. And there's many responses. There's the righteous, the angry, the frustrated, of course, and we're lucky probably none of us were involved. Compassionate, again. But then the other response is, well, where do you find safety? You turn in. And I remember, for myself, it made me think of another shooting. Probably you're all old enough to remember this. December 1980, in New York, John Lennon was shot. Now, I didn't really know who he was then. I was only 9. I'd just turned 10. My music teacher, you can imagine a music teacher in 1980 would have been grown up with the Beatles, and so what he did, his way of processing his grief, was to bring to a whole new generation of kids the beauty of this music. So for the whole of that term, from December right through to Christmas, all we did was listen to the Beatles. And the song he started with was The Fool on the Hill. And I don't know if you remember that, but the gist is very simple. There's this fool on the hill who sits quietly. The eyes in his head see the world spinning round. He kind of says things, but nobody listens to him, and nobody really wants to hear him. Nobody likes him, because in the song they can see that he's just a fool. So there's a whole group of us, these little kids. We're just, we just got this feeling that there's this. It's the kind of archetype of the silent sage, or that inner knowing, and we see that the world is this kind of chaotic, crazy thing, kind of going round and round, and there's somebody else, and so things like that can create if you like, an image, or just something which sticks in your mind, and so from something. This is again part of the Buddhist way, is to contemplate, or to take something which is tragic, terrible, unskillful, can be in somebody else, it can be within ourselves, and say, okay, well, what's the point here? What am I going to learn from this? How am I going to change my way of thinking in a way that some good comes of this? It's not that you want this bad thing to happen. They say, yeah, it was good that it happened. But having happened, why not learn something from it and make some kind of a change? So that's, I remember talking about dreams again, so I started buying these albums, this music, and listen to it late at night after putting my lights out. My mum thought I'd gone to sleep. Put on this music and just listen to these songs. I didn't understand half of them. You probably remember some pretty. But you dream about a kind of different type of reality, and always this idea of the silent sage, like, who knows the world, who can see the world and has a different perspective to everyone else. And the world doesn't want to hear that. And so, okay, the world doesn't care, so be it. I'll just be happy on my hill. So it was like he wasn't afraid. He was on his fearless mountain. It's the meaning of a Abhayagiri. So if people want to hear what we say, that's fine. If people don't, and the world generally doesn't, that's totally fine, because we're not doing it for the world. The point is we're turning inwards, and so everyone who practices this path of Dharma, the Dhamma, the truth, will always be found inside, with good advice, good words. But if we understand the extent to which we are creating the meaning of everything around us, like, is that a car? Is that a helicopter? That's our understanding of it. That's our meaning. That's our version of events. Does it bother us? That's up to us as well. The whole of our realm of reality is what we create. Then we can make changes and experience things in a very different way. The same goes for our relationships with other people and everything. And so those are really the, in a sense, the in a nutshell, or very simply, what we're doing, how we begin to relate to things, is this way of what we call of non-craving. Craving is it's an interesting word. It has so many layers or levels of meaning. We're familiar with that raw craving. It's basically, I want this. And it's usually bound up with craving for things, for food, sexual experiences, the sense realm, go here, go there. More subtle versions, I want so-and-so to be like this, I want so-and-so to be like that. And then even things for the world which are good, like I would like the world to be a better place, I'd like the world not to have climate change or this and that. There's this wanting, there's this craving. And on a more and more subtle level, it's very much bound up with the whole process of creating things, even those things as things. Creating me, I'm here with such and such a name, with such and such a role, such and such a job, such and such a history, with my view and opinion about such and such a thing, or I want this object or that object. And seeing that that's the real craving is, if you feel like, it's the glue that sticks it all together and makes it a thing. That's what we call it, reifies it, makes it a thing. Rather than seeing it as a process that comes and goes, that changes, that's uncertain. So again, so important to reflect. All our attitudes and values are conditioned by childhood, family, our friends. I was talking to somebody today. I grew up in England in the 70s, and so that conditions me in a certain way. I grew up with certain values which somebody else here would just think it's just outrageous. So just because of just different kind of conditioning. And you can argue it, you can see both sides of the story, and so we acknowledge that. We see that this is very much like the clouds. Basically our lives are pretty much more like the weather patterns, weather systems. Sometimes they're more like tropical storms, sometimes they're more placid, but generally it's this combination of lots and lots of things coming together which create a certain feeling, create a certain experience, a certain emotion, which we can also distill down to what we call sukha and dukkha, pleasure, pain, or liking, disliking, nice, not nice. It's another way of just stepping back and experiencing our life. So the practical application is that we then, when we know this, we can more and more acknowledge that, and then that which is difficult, which is hard to bear, we can find a way to come to terms with it, because we know ultimately that's our created perception of it. And a lot of the spirit of the fool on the hill is being silent, not going out and telling other people what to do, getting angry, but also silent within ourselves. We're the person who causes most suffering for ourselves. It's our own mind, our own mental chatter, our own nagging, critical, judgmental. And so without getting angry with ourselves, we're not saying, shut up already, but we're just saying, all right, don't need to comment on everything. Don't need to have or such a strong opinion, or don't need to be so righteous. Righteous, it's sad, righteous is a good thing. Truly righteous means, correct and noble and virtuous. It's taken on, unfortunately, this sense of righteous indignation. When somebody's righteous, it's like, so righteous indignation. And then we can hope, come back to while I breathe I hope. We can dream, we can hope for, basically to create a whole different world of experience. None of us is trapped or limited, put it that way, to the way we are, the way we think, the emotions. We can all make changes. I'm sure every one of you has times in your life where you've made changes. It can be quitting something, giving up a bad habit. It can be deciding, making a change, deciding externally, I'm going to move there and start again. And those things give us they're indicators that, our life isn't fixed. We're not in some fixed system where you're born in a certain way, you think in a certain way, you get a certain job, you go down a certain route. Literally, sky's the limit. And so I was just thinking the other day again, the Sangha, this being a monk, the Sangha in our chanting is often called what's called Anuttarang Punyaketang, which means the unsurpassed field of merit. The idea in traditional Buddhist kind of perspective is that obviously if there are spiritual beings in the world, that this is what the world needs, this is beneficial, and that merit, goodness, wholesomeness arises based on their being true practitioners. Doesn't necessarily mean monks and nuns, but those that have realized truth, whether it's making offerings to the Sangha or listening to the Sangha or being associated. It's association with that which is truly virtuous is what's called a field of merit. But for me, it's a field of dreams. The Sangha is my field of dreams. This daring to dream and lead my life in a different way. I would never have guessed. I wasn't thinking of merit and this and that. I'm just gonna dare to dream and hope that these are good things, and make certain changes. And so in this kind of time, obviously, there's a lot of dukkha around, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of uncertainty. Or we can dream of a state of mind which goes beyond that. We don't have to necessarily buy into that. And we're all going to face aging, sickness and death, or facing it already. Getting a bit creaky, getting a bit more wrinkly than we'd like to be, probably. You look in the mirror, it's often, you can see your gut reaction can be, don't like what I see. It doesn't have to be that way, and we don't have to fix it. We can't fix it externally. We can try, do a bit of management, do a bit of damage limitation, but we have to let go at some point. So we can dream of changing ourselves, or we can really allow nature to manifest and really be okay with it. And so this is effective. This is at the heart of this path. And so these things, like this fire that's come through, it's nothing other than a reminder. It's nothing other than a reminder. We can say it's great, we're safe, and it's over. But actually it's saying, look, it's happening. I've just been, I've been reading a lot of Ajahn Chah this last few months. The very last paragraph of the biography recounts the last night in England, and he's visited, Ajahn Chah, our teacher, visited England and America in 1977. Well, England in 77, and then England and the States in 79. And in 79 he flew to England first, then came over here to the West Coast, then the East Coast, and then back to England. And it's his last night before flying back to Thailand, and he's with the monks, and they're just having a very informal, very sweet, intimate tea time chit-chat. And our senior monk, our senior Westerner, Ajahn Sumedho, just kind of talking casually, just says, "Oh, Luang Por, do you know that there are astrologers and all kinds of predictions being made that there's going to be some major thing in 2 years. There's going to be like major earthquakes in 2 years." And Luang Por Chah's response is, 2 years? 2 years? You think there's going to be an earthquake in 2 years? 2 years, that's way too far away. There's an earthquake happening now. It's happening now. He says, and he's just been to America, he says, there's an earthquake in America now, don't you know? And then he points to his heart. He says, the earthquake's happening here too. And he says, a baby's born and it's crying. There, that's an earthquake. And so he's pointing us to the simple truth that actually, if we really want to wake up, we have to see what we experience, the turbulence that whatever is happening outside, the turbulence we feel is here. It's emotional, it's mental. And so that's where we have to look. That's where we have to attend and realize that. So the last words, he says, when you finally see that there's nothing in your experience worth holding on to as me and mine, that's the deathless. There's nothing that can be seen as passing away then if you don't identify. So these are very high Dhammas, these are very lofty concepts, but we have to know them and dream about them. And that's not something which we should think, oh well, I'm just little me, I couldn't really think like that, we have to see, if we say see things as they are, then we have to be bold enough to say, yeah, okay, as long as I hold to any experience as me and mine, try and hold on to it. I've got it. No, I lost it. It has to happen. So what's the alternative? Well, don't cling onto it as me and mine. And again, we begin bit by bit with being generous, with precepts, leading a righteous life, right livelihood, letting go. And then, actually, we don't have to have too many concepts in the Dhamma. We don't have to know this whole big books and study Pali and stuff. Just a few simple teachings is enough for those that want to think about them, wake up to them, and then dream about internalizing them. Then that's all we need. So at this kind of time, it's great. It's important to be developing the basic, more like the practical needs now, being compassionate to our friends, looking after them, providing requisites, asking us like, do we have everything? Those things are important, the basics are important, but they're always going to be limited. There's only so much we can do in this basic physical realm. Then we have the time to turn inwards and look after ourselves. We can't go around teaching other people unless they want to hear. I can talk to you because you come here, and I get the sense there's this interest, but we can't fix the world. We can't talk to other people. And you've got to be like this. You wake up, this and that. Get spiritual. See that it's all non-self. You can't do that. We can more or less focus on ourselves. Again, Ajahn Chah's very simple simile. You can only feed and digest your own food. You can't digest somebody else's food, and you can get the benefits from what you put in your mouth. So he was always pointing at us to look at our experience, but from that the benefits will accrue. So anyway, I'm sure you've all been being very supportive to a lot of folks here. You guys in this situation now, and that's what we do as people. That's a very wonderful thing. As people, we rally round, we just look after each other. Even in, we were having a meal in Denny's a couple of days ago. I wasn't expecting to be having breakfast in Denny's in Fort Bragg, but that's how the world turns. And like the kind of little women working in Denny's, they're a universal archetypal kind of big mama type. It could be Thailand, it could be anywhere. They were 30 of us walked in there, and they're like, okay boys, sit down, we're going to get waffles and eggs, and you just hang on, and they're bringing them out, there's more coming, you just don't hold back, and then bringing them out, and come on, it's here, if you don't get it, come and get it, I'm going to eat it, it could have been a kiddie's birthday party, or we could have been troops going off, we could have been, it's just that basically we're the boys, and they just want to feed us, and they're loving that, and they just, and we walk out, and they're like, wow, we fed them, and they had a great time, and they're off, those monks, and that's it, that's, you see that all the time. It doesn't need to be some disaster situation, and that's the beautiful thing about us as people, is that we naturally, we're nurturing people, and especially when there's this sense, okay, it has its dark side, the sense of our tribe, our folks, it can be like us and them, but the nice side is that we really look after each other, and that's lovely. So those things are spiritual values. You could say the conventions, knowing that people are in need of help, but then at the same time balancing that with we're now able to look beyond that, beyond the conventions. At the same time, in Denny's, on the table, there's this thing: 1 in 6 kids in America are short of food. Contribute $3 and we'll feed 10 kids. And you think, yeah, how is that possible? There's these two worlds existing at the same time, 2 parallel ways of thinking. And this is, again, no criticism. This is just the nature of things which we have to accept, and we can do our little bit to you could say, for the world, for each other, for our immediate, and then keep our mind peaceful, keep our mind wise, keep our mind positive and wholesome. Do what little bit we can and find happiness. That's the path, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I've said a few words then this evening, kind of wind up there, and maybe sit quietly. Anyone's got anything to comment on that, or objections or questions? Feel free. just sit quietly, that's really nice too.
Ajahn, I have a question.
It's dense.
I know you know, since the Abhayagiri monastery is in the midst of the fire danger and, who knows, maybe even at this moment burning down.
Mm-hmm.
And you all were evacuated and are, in the midst of all that.
Mm-hmm.
Too. If you can share maybe what some of that conversations or even your personal reflections on how to relate to that whole issue of, just the physical place, all the generation of building it up, etc. And maybe just gone.
Sure, I mean that's the beautiful thing, Metika in Fort Bragg commented that we just had this air of equanimity around, we just arrived and it was just, we were there and settling in and having tea, and she just felt there was this feeling of equanimity around the group. So she asked me to kind of comment on that, so I said, well, this is exactly how it feels, it is my experience and the conversation, if you like, we've been having. First off, our experience was a very, you could say, non-traumatic and so there wasn't that kind of, people weren't working with strong emotions around that, which also helps keep that sense of mindfulness and awareness. So we got out and we were evacuated. We wanted to, we evacuated ourselves. See this thing, okay, get everyone there, the thing up the list, and then get the vehicles, make sure we know who's in which vehicle and figure out how to get out, Essentially, and then since over the last couple of days, then realizing, okay, it's still going and being very aware now that we have to prepare for, The point is this whole Abhayagiri is our monastery, is our home, but we never departed from the spirit of being anagarikas or homeless ones. There's a very different feeling. I mean, I don't have a family, put it that way. I don't have a wife and kids. There's very specific reasons for that, because the level of attachment that you have, if you have a wife, you have a family, you have a business, you have investments, that your conscious identifying with your whole future and hopes and dreams lies in this physical and emotional kind of situation. That is very different from our relationship to Abhayagiri monastery, despite the 20 years that have been put into it and all the, the sweat and tears and a bit of blood, probably a few cuts and bruises, and all the donations from the lay people and all the support. Even that, actually, we weren't doing it for Abhayagiri, you see. That's just an abstract concept. We have a monastery. The whole time, what the monasteries are, they're skillful means to develop ourselves in the practice of letting go. And that's really basically what we've been doing. And so there hasn't been a single conversation of like, oh, this is a tragedy, or oh, if it's not, I don't know what I'm going to do, or where do we go? Because in a sense, Ajahn Pasana was going to leave anyway. A couple of monks were going to come to Thailand. I've got a flight out on the 4th, and and the monks have been growing up in a spirit of genuine uncertainty. Anicca, impermanence, is always translated by Ajahn Chah as mainaya, which means changeful. And so, we've basically been brainwashing ourselves for exactly this moment. There's no other way. It's exactly how I see it. And it's basically death. See, as I said today, we think now we do meditation, told Devi now, you go back and visualize, like in the same way that we meditate on skeletons and corpses, you visualize a corpse in stages of decomposition for the very reason that it leads to letting go, leads to abandoning. You understand the truth, and when you come to die, this has always been on the cards. If not now, if not sooner than later, or if not later than sooner. So you visualize, Abhayagiri burnt, if not totally, then a lot of it, and horrible and ruined and blah blah blah. But that if it wasn't this week, it's going to be at some point, and if not in your lifetime, well, when you die, Abhayagiri ends for you. That's the end of it. There's no more Abhayagiri for you. And so, when you do, I am of the nature to age, I have not gone beyond aging, you do these reflections. One of the chants we reflect In Pali, sabbehi me piyehi manabehi nana bhavo vina bhavo. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. I mean, it's just like, it's exactly what we've been reflecting on. And then, so during that time, not investing in it, not making it our true refuge. It's been our temporary shelter, our temporary refuge. And all the work we put into it, when you understand that it's all been about creating happiness, then you can really say none of that was wasted. All the point of all the buildings and all the thing was actually, you could say, for the egoic or the very self-centered thing of training ourselves and bringing ourselves peace and happiness, but then also sharing it with others. And we've been talking to all the lay supporters about letting go, And so, really in terms of conversation, I haven't had a single kind of like, oh, isn't this a tragedy and what are we going to do? I mean, that just doesn't, it literally just doesn't kind of come up. And but in a sense, but that's the whole point of leading the life in that very way, you see. It'd be obviously so different if we had a family, if we had investment, if we had our livestock or our whatever. Or if we'd been building it, for example, if you kind of build it with this idea of like, Bhagavad is going to be this great, kind of center of Dhamma propagation, and this is what's going to save the world. Again, you're a materialistic, religious, kind of missionary type, which is actually quite, it's materialistic. It's a sense of like, we're here, we've got this thing, we're going to bring the Dhamma to the people, and that's good, that's our role. See, we can all just close up shop and go back to Thailand, or go and, go here and go there and get scattered, and just say, like, almost, maybe lying time means never mind. Like it's really okay. And Luang Por Liam, our teacher, that's how he talks all the time. Like I said at Full Bragg, if I said to him, if I called him up and said, oh, Luang Por, the monastery just burned down. Well, he said, of course it has, it's in a forest. And when you live in a forest, he'd say, if you live in a forest, you've got to have a forest fire. You can't have a forest without forest fires. So what are you telling me for? I knew that.
Well, he just see as a cycle in nature.
Huh?
There's too much many trees and they need to burn, so they could keep after the new tree.
Exactly, it's actually natural. So if not this year, then it's got to be next year. So we have so much of this, and applying it, to ourselves, to our lives, to our letting go. I think people, you shouldn't underestimate the power of, say, a celibate life where you're reducing sexual or sensual craving, because there's not like craving for this thing and then craving for food and craving for travel and craving for monasteries. It's an all over relationship to the external world where you're creating hopes and desires and wants, and just bringing down one area, or working in one area and another area, the whole thing comes down. It's this process of motion towards and motion away from. I like this, I don't like that. And because we're constantly working with that cycle, when you take away the signs and features, we've basically just been reducing that whole relationship to the external world. And so there's many results I can see of that. So that's how we do it now. But this is all the results of many years of preparing for it, like I say. It's all about training for this moment. And it's enjoyable along the way. So it's not like we just sort of, gritting our teeth and sort of flagellating ourselves. And one day this is going to be worth it because the Bhagavad is going to burn down and we're going to be okay. It's actually a really nice process. It's beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, beautiful in the end. And so, I'm convinced this works. You can tell. But in terms of our conversation, our experience, it's been very cool. But we've been in this incredible, I don't want to say the Dharma kind of has been looking after us, just generosity. From here to Willits, you arrive in Willits and there's this community centre. It's stuff laid on for us. We go to the high school, they're giving us food. Then let's make a move to Fort Bragg. We've got Metica Centre, which is like a home away from home. So even though we're homeless, we've still got this beautiful, straw bale Dharma center by the beautiful, west coast with redwoods, and we got, within a few minutes, we're sitting around all jolly with tea and cheese and chocolate, and it's her Monday night thing, so we just had a Monday night. Do you know what I mean? We've been in this beautiful stream, and then you arrive finally at the city, 10,000 Buddhas who gifted us a Baigir in the first place, so it all kind of comes full circle. We're now refugees back in our... and, we have more blankets and things than we could hope for, and the best vegetarian food in the country. So, we got it pretty good. We're very lucky.
I learned from Ajahn Chah about this cup. You love this cup. You should see it as broken, already broken. And I have this little fragile teapot. This is already broken, and this is so fragile. This is already broken, and it hasn't broken yet. This is not yet broken. I know it's going to break.
Yeah.
I have to say that's the way my mother raised me, was as far as death goes. And I almost died 2.5 years ago. But I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to enjoy the journey now. But as far as I see it, I'm already, I'm already gone. So it's okay.
Yeah, it can be. That's why, these, either one's education, one's training, or a near-death experience, wakes you up. And our teacher used to say, die before you die. That's the point. You can really say, okay, now I've let go. As far as I'm concerned, I'm gone, and this is all a bonus. Again, that changes the way you feel about things, your different priorities. But I'll share something with you. It's like having a fire here, and just seeing, monasteries are so fragile, and all the work you put into it. It's made me reflect, and again, kind of given me, you could say, reinforced my sort of perspective around, say, how I'd like to lead my monastic life. The extra care and concern around putting too much into possibly transient, flammable, and in many ways, emotionally flammable and physically flammable situations, and just really not lose sight of the practice, because you don't want to be in a situation where something you've put a whole lot into, the transitory nature of it. It is a wake-up call. We need these constant reminders. But that's true. I've been thinking about it. Okay, I'll go back to Thailand. I live in a forest, and we have forest fires, but they're very different. They just come creeping over, just burning along the bamboo leaves, and bamboo goes up. It's very dramatic, because the bamboo sections, they're airtight, and then it heats up, and then they explode. So each stand of bamboos, it sounds like these kind of like Chinese firecrackers going off, and you can hear them. It goes on for weeks and weeks, and it's this horrible feeling. It's creeping in. And so, we have a fire break around the monastery, and it's kind of should be good enough. And we'll never be in danger physically because of the nature. It's just very slow. We can generally always protect things. For us, the main concern is it's horrible knowing that when the big trees catch fire, if they catch fire and enough, then they fall. So why we're protecting our forest is more a bit of an environmental offering to the national park. So we can do a fire break. We've invested in it. We have it cleared every year. But again, you have this same feeling of we're not safe here, and we're basically, we can't be so arrogant and conceited that we think we're any stronger than nature. Ultimately, Mother Nature's in control, and we have to adapt accordingly. So there are many, many, you could say, reflections and perspectives that we can gain from all of this. More and more of that. It's more of that sense of, okay, how does it cultivate spiritual urgency for us? How does it focus our attentions on priorities? And you hear this when people have had some kind of near-death experience. it clarifies your priorities. You're not going to waste time on doing stupid stuff anymore, and things which worried you, just not worth it. It's in a kind of quiet mood. We'll just maybe sit quietly for 5 minutes, then we'll do a kind of internal closing up. No need for a kind of last question or last comments from me, and then I'll just ring the bell in 5 minutes or so.